My name is Brian Haugstad, and I have the pleasure of introducing our study in the Book of Kings. As a quick note, this study was a volunteer effort, and we have gotten volunteers from the Awakened Church community that are going to be preparing and presenting individual studies on the Book of Kings. We as a collective have all read and prayed and sought the Spirit as to what these scriptures and studies say, what God is trying to give to us in these studies. But I want to just make a note of grace for this entire study series. We are human beings. We are not divine authority on what Scripture says. And as humans, we have gotten it wrong for all of history. So we just want to ask that everyone here taking this study will accept our invitation to also read and seek the Spirit. Don't take everything we say at face value. Please look into it for yourself and pray and seek God about these things. Seek out the divine authority. Looking at the Book of Kings. So I'm referring to it as Kings as one book because in the Hebrew Bible, it is one book. It was divided in our modern Christian Bible into two books. But it is answering a question that the Jewish people in Babylonian exile had. It is believed that this book was written while Jews were in slavery in Babylonia. And the author is saying, this is why, this is what happened, and trying to answer that question for the people. It covers a massive period of history, approximately 970 BC to 597 BC. So a huge period, and we're going to be looking over all of it. But the starting point is really important, because if the author's answering the question, why are we in slavery, where he starts is a key to understanding that. We begin with David sick and on his deathbed, essentially. He's in his, I don't know if it was hospice care, but he was not doing well. We're told he's given Abishag the Shunammite as his caretaker. Now it's important to understand she was not just a caretaker, she was his concubine. So she had legal rights in association with David. And the author makes a distinct choice to say in 1 Kings 1:5, the king did not cohabitate with her. That's going to come back. That's important right there. Everyone in the nation is waiting for the next king. And they actually know who the next king is going to be because David announced it. We have to jump to Chronicles to understand this, but 1 Chronicles 28:5, David's been preparing building plans for the temple, and God says to him, "You shall not build a house for my name, because you are a man of war and have shed blood." And rather, God has chosen David's son, Solomon, to sit on the throne and build the temple. God has announced this. The people know this and understand this. But David's son, who apparently had the birthright to the throne, he wants it. His name is Abijah. He wants the throne for himself. He's David's fourth son, but we're given clues that indicate he's the oldest living son. So he has a birthright. He wants to claim it. And he doesn't wait. David's on his deathbed, and he sets up a coronation ceremony for himself. And there are a few people he leaves off the invite list for that coronation ceremony. And these people are really key players, really key characters that the author of Kings doesn't tell us much about. So I want to dive into those people a little bit. First, left off the invite list is Nathan. Now, Nathan is the prophet, and Nathan delivered the Davidic covenant to David. The Davidic covenant is really important. This is a continued theme throughout the entire Bible, but particularly in the Book of Kings. And it says that a person from the line of David is going to sit on the throne of Israel forever, that his throne will be established forever. And this is fulfilled in the Messiah later. But this is a constant question that the Israelites were asking is, who's the king? Who is it? What human is coming? So this is really important. Nathan is the person who gave that prophecy to David. As well, he's the person who called out David on his affair with Bathsheba. This is a close, intimate person with David, a person who is willing to say, hey, you are messing up. I don't think it was an enemy. I don't think he did that out of spite. I think he did that out of love. And we see that in David's response. But he's left off the invite list. You're not coming to Adonijah's ceremony. Next person is Benaiah. Benaiah was a great warrior who had served in warfare with David for many, many years. Next person off the invite list is the captain of David's bodyguard and the entire bodyguard itself. So the royal officials, not coming, you're not welcome. And lastly, Solomon. Solomon doesn't get an invite. And after this coronation happens, actually Nathan hears about it. He finds out about it. And he goes to Bathsheba, who in turn goes to David. He's like, hey, do you remember when you got God's instruction that Solomon's supposed to be king? And David remembers it. So he sets up a coronation ceremony for Solomon. And Solomon is taken to Gihon, which is Jerusalem's main water source. And he's anointed, and they blow trumpets, and they shout, "Long live King Solomon!" And Adonijah hears about this, and he's terrified. And Adonijah does something beautiful. He runs to the temple. He runs to the temple, and he bows and grabs at the horns of the altar, and he begs for forgiveness. He seeks mercy at the altar of God. And Solomon grants it. He sees him bowing, and he tells him, "Go to your house. Go in peace. You've been given this forgiveness." And next, David is in his final discussion that we see with Solomon. And he actually passes on the Davidic covenant to Solomon. He knows Solomon's about to take the throne, and he tells him in 1 Kings 2:4, "If your sons are careful of their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart and soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel." Then David dies. The great king of Israel dies. His son Solomon has full authority. And immediately the author jumps back to Adonijah. And Adonijah is scheming again. And he asks for Abishag, the concubine of David, to be given to him as his wife. And looking into their culture, we can understand this. To claim the wife, to claim the concubine of a former king, was to claim the throne. If he got married to Abishag, he would have legal claim to the throne of Israel. So he's scheming, he's up to this. And this is why the author tells us distinctly, David did not cohabitate with her. The marriage was not sealed. Abishag's work was in vain, whether it would have worked or not. He doesn't get to marry her. But Bathsheba goes and tells Solomon about this. And he doesn't have mercy this time around. He gets Benaiah, the man who was left off the invite list for Adonijah's coronation ceremony, and sends him out to do his dirty work. He goes and he slays Adonijah. And then he sets out to kill everyone who was in Adonijah's conspiracy. He goes and he finds the high priest and he's going to kill him. But because he's the high priest, he decides not to kill him and instead dismisses him from that role. And then he finds another one of Adonijah's conspirators. And this conspirator runs and just like Adonijah, bows at the altar and begs forgiveness. And Benaiah says, "Get out of the temple. We cannot do this in here." And the man won't leave, so he slays him at the mercy seat of the king. When I hear this, I have to be real. Part of me feels a deep sense of justice happening here. Part of me thinks, yes, Solomon is getting rid of all these schemers. He's taking care of business. But that just shows how messed up my perspective is. A man just ran to the altar of God and begged for forgiveness, and Solomon has him slayed. Solomon is told the Davidic covenant that if he walks in God's ways, that a man will be on the throne forever. And the first thing he does taking the throne is starts killing people. God had wanted a man of peace. David was a man of bloodshed and war and wasn't allowed to build the temple. God wanted a man of peace to build the temple, and he has Solomon instead. Now, there are those that argue Solomon was worthy. I say Solomon got to build God's temple because of God's incredible grace.